Alrighty. Welcome everyone to August 20th Inland SoCal Housing Collective meeting. I'm grateful you guys are all here. We took a month off, and we do this every year in July just because of all the hustle of July and vacations. And so we're happy to be back this month. Although I've been able to see many of you folks in different settings, it's great to see you all here. So for today's meeting, we have two presentations. The first will be Insights on Vital Conditions and Human Housing in the IE by Dr. Justine Ross from UCR Center for Community Solutions. And then our second presenter will be talking about the groundbreaking on Plan Adelanto, and that's Inland Equity Community Land Trust, and that'll be Maribel Nunez and Jeff Green. So we're very excited for that. I will go ahead. Just Dr. Ross, do you need? I'll make you a presenter so you can share your screen if that works.
That my cue?
Yeah, so you could go
Okay.
ahead and if you need a minute to get it up, you should be good to go. But yeah,
Um,
welcome. Thank you. We're excited. Just a little background. I know earlier this month, I was at the IECF Summit, Policy and Philanthropy Summit, and got to hear Dr. Ross talk a little bit about the vital conditions. I was really excited about the data she shared, and had a follow-up conversation like, "Hey, can you bring this to the collective? I think it'd be great for our members to know." And so she's going to share that presentation, but also there's a little bit of housing data she was able to dig in the meantime that she's going to share out here too. So thank you for coming and sharing this again, and we're excited to have you here.
Wonderful. No, thank you so much for the invitation and hi to everybody. It's really good to see you all. Just want to make sure you can see my screen or my slides, right? Okay,
Yeah.
terrific. So for those of you who were at IECF Summit, the slides are going to look very familiar. I promise there is some new content to what Melody was talking about. I pulled some of the kind of housing specific metrics that we had included in the survey, but hopefully there'll be a little bit more room if you do have questions or presented in a slightly different way. So. Jumping right in, for context, IECF contracted our center to conduct sort of this exploratory study of what it really means to thrive in the IE. And so to do this, we drew upon both publicly available data, which you can find those analyses in our report that I'll link to later on. And we also administered an original survey to nearly 2,400 IE residents. And this survey included replication of kind of these established measures that you probably all are very familiar with, as well as some original questions that allowed us to gain some insight into kind of unique experiences in the IE. And so today, what I focused on at IECF and what I'm going to mostly focus on today is Cantrell's ladder, which measures well-being, very, very commonly and very broadly used. A belonging barometer to measure belonging in your local community, and then also the civic engagement scale. And so for those of you, I think probably everybody in this room is very familiar with Cantrell's ladder, but in case you aren't, Cantrell's ladder, again, is this very well-established measure that asks you to rate your life today and in 5 years on this ladder of 0 to 10. And then based on your answers to those two questions, you're sorted into one of three categories. You're characterized as thriving if you have really strong and consistent well-being. You're generally very optimistic about your future. That's sort of a key factor, typically associated with experiencing thriving. If you're struggling, you have more moderate and precarious well-being. This group is often thought to be kind of, they might be able to move up the ladder, but oftentimes they're in a situation where an adverse life event that's unexpected might send them kind of sliding down the ladder. And so you have to be a little more sensitive to this group. And then if you're suffering, you low well-being across the board. You're at very high risk for an adverse life event, and you have daily challenges, and you're super difficult to reach through kind of the traditional resources and supports that we have available in our communities. And so this historically is the most difficult group for us to reach. And so we administered this ladder again to just under 2,400 IE residents, and we found that about 41% of IE residents are thriving, 53% are struggling, and 6% are suffering. In a vacuum, this doesn't really mean all that much. Like, this could be great. And so we compared the IE to the US and to the global population to get a sense of really like where are we falling, what do these numbers mean if we give them sort of additional context. And what we find is that the IE thrives at a rate that is lower than the US, struggles at a rate that is higher, but does better than the US global population on average. And so, for context, if the IE was its own country, so let's imagine Riverside and San Bernardino County is its own country, we would be most comparable with respect to well-being to countries like Brazil and Slovakia, which is interesting because a lot of times we talk about financial resources as being really key to well-being, and they absolutely are. I don't want to, discredit that. But at the same time, if the IE was its own country, our GDP would be substantially higher than these other countries. And so because of this, and because we know that, financial resources like income aren't the be all end all, we were asked by IECF to really dig into kind of belonging and civic muscle, to really understand that relationship with well-being in the IE, sort of this foundational vital condition. And the reason, again, I think I'm preaching to the choir here, but the reason, or belonging is our sense of connection. So it's to people, places, lived experiences, identities. Civic muscle, we're really talking about more than just like voting in elections or participating in jury duty, which are kind of, I think, the traditional ideas, what we think of as civic muscle or civic engagement. It's really our capacity to come together and to kind of capitalize on our individual strengths and convert that into shared impact through some sort of collective action. And so the reason why belonging and civic muscle are kind of coupled together in vital conditions is because they form this really powerful feedback loop where when you have higher levels of belonging, you're more likely to engage in some sort of shared action. And every time you do that, particularly if it's successful, but every time you do that, you increase and heighten your sort of feelings of belonging. And so we know that belonging and civic muscle don't just move together in sort of this feedback loop, they also move with well-being. And so what you're looking at here is the belonging barometer sliced by well-being category. So what I mean here is the belonging barometer asks 10 statements or asks the survey respondent to answer their level of agreement with 10 statements related to their feelings of belonging in their local community. And so you then take the average of those scores, there's sort of prior research on this, and then you're described as either experiencing exclusion, ambiguity, or belonging. And so these again are the results split by well-being category. And what we find is that residents who are thriving are about 5 times as likely to feel like they belong as those who are suffering, and about twice that of those who are struggling. And about 1 in 3 of those who are suffering feel excluded. So what we're looking at really, though, when you look at these bottom 2 buckets, is that about 68% of IE residents fall into exclusion or ambiguity, which prior researchers characterize as sort of experiencing non-belonging. Which means just about 32% of IE residents feel like they really belong in their local community. 32% is, I think at first pass, it seems kind of bleak. It isn't a great number on its face. But the national average is much, much lower. So only about 14% of Americans experience belonging in their local communities. So this is actually an area where the IE is doing comparatively pretty well. Certainly room for improvement, but again, compared to sort of this national measure, we're doing quite well. Very, very similarly, this is the results of the civic engagement scale. So kind of a similar methodology to the belonging barometer. You're given a battery of statements and you rate your level of agreement with each. And then based on that, you're grouped or you're characterized as experiencing low, moderate, or high levels of civic engagement. And very, very similarly, we find that, like belonging, civic muscle varies a lot by well-being. Nearly 60% of residents who are thriving believe that they can and should make a difference in their community, that they should engage and do engage in sort of this shared action. And that's, again, about twice those of those who are suffering. But again, similarly, you see a lot of residents kind of falling into this middle bucket. And when you actually look at the responses to the individual statements that make up the civic engagement scale, what you see is that in the IE, we tend to have very high levels of agreement with the statements that pertain to like our belief that it's important to be involved and engaged. So we have a very high level of professed responsibility for our local community. We want to be engaged, but we drop off with respect to our level of agreement for those statements that actually indicate whether you took the action. And it's unclear from the data. We can't really parse out, is this because there are certain structural barriers maybe to participation? If I'm being really cynical, is it maybe just easier to say that you should be involved than to actually be involved? We're not really sure, but I do think it's something that's interesting and that, just want to flag for this group. We don't know what the mechanism is here, but I think it's sort of a helpful baseline. And so we're left with sort of this, understanding now that about 1 in 3 IU residents experience local community belonging, and about 1 in 2 have high levels of civic engagement. In our online report, which I will show you in just a second here, you will see we also broke all of this out by demographics, and there's a lot of good information there. So I just didn't have time in the original presentation to get through it. But do know if you're interested in a particular racial or ethnic group or age group, all of that is available online, and is important and very interesting finding wise as well. And then, as you just saw through those graphs, we also find these really significant differences in belonging and civic muscle across these well-being categories, which again, helpful baseline, but what does that actually mean in practice? Like, why are we going through all of this? What does it look like in everyday life? And so this is something that I could wax on for a long time about, but in the interest of being relatively concise, belonging and civic muscle is just, it's a well labeled vital condition because it does encapsulate, it's this very broad umbrella, but it's not a hugely descriptive or concrete sounding vital condition. And so, for instance, like at the conference, I talked about, reliable transportation. It tells you exactly what it is, and we all know exactly how that can contribute to your well-being. We can visualize that. But belonging in civic muscle is a little bit like squishy. We know it's this sort of multi-solver of all multi-solvers because it cuts across all of the other vital conditions. It can activate them. We know that from prior research is incredibly tightly sort of correlated with well-being outcomes. So for instance, we know that at the individual level, having low levels of connection and belonging is as bad for your health as smoking or heavy drinking. We know that communities that have high levels of belonging overall, belonging in civic muscle, they do better during economic downturns. They bounce back faster. They do better in natural disasters. They're just healthier, more educated, everything you want your community to be. And so for us, sort of with this, again, baseline in mind and knowing how important belonging in civic muscle is, we turn to this question of, it's not whether or not the IE wants to invest in belonging in civic muscle, it's how and where. Why might we be able to get kind of the biggest bang for our buck? Or, are there maybe certain aspects of belonging, kind of subfacets of belonging that, might provide some insight, I guess, into kind of how belonging is experienced across the IE. And so to gain insight into this question, we ran what's called a principal component analysis of the 10 belonging barometer statements that make up the graph that you saw a while back. So there's a lot on these slides. I'm sure right now my head is tiny and the slides are probably relatively small, so don't worry if you can't read it. No? Okay. Melanie's got a better setup than I do. So yeah, just don't worry if you don't get all of this. It's all in the report and I'll walk you through it. The gist is, again, these are those 10 statements. So this is your rating your level of agreement with each. And so we run this correlational analysis because we want to know, are there certain statements that are grouped together in terms of how people are answering them? And if there are, that means that there might be this sort of this latent facet of belonging that we're not explicitly asking about in our survey, but that we're able to sort of gain insight around, and that sort of emerges from our data. And it turns out through this principal component analysis, there are sort of these two distinct groupings that emerge. The 4 items that are on the left side of your screen, we are labeling as being related to kind of bonding social capital. So these are statements with respect to kind of connecting to people in our local community who are similar to us. They typically bring about these feelings of like emotional support and personal comfort. And those 6 statements on the right reflect what we are labeling as being related to bridging social capital. So these are typically connections to people who are different than us. And they kind of lift up these themes related to inclusion and fairness and community influence. And so we had kind of this idea, okay, there are kind of these 2 distinct latent aspects of belonging within our measure. But we want to know, is one of these maybe more closely tied to thriving in the IE? And so to get kind of preliminary insight into this, we started by graphing each of these statements, again, sliced by well-being category. So this graph is in the report, again, if you can't see it. But what we see is sort of similar to what we saw, obviously, for the belonging barometer graph that I showed you a few slides back, which is, thriving residents report the highest belonging, suffering the lowest. And these gaps are actually biggest for the bridging statements. So there's slightly less disparity among those bonding social capital statements. So why does this matter, though? Again, the variation to us suggested that that belonging might be shaped, or the belonging might shape well-being rather in different ways. And so we want to really understand, if we're going to make potentially policy or resource or program investments, where might we get kind of the biggest return? What levers can we pull to really build a more connected and thriving region? And so to dig even deeper into this, we modeled how each type of belonging relates to well-being. And we did this using by running a series of ordinal logistic regressions. And what we find is that for both of those two belonging dimensions, as well as overall belonging and civic muscle, they're all significantly and positively associated with thriving in the IE, even when controlling for things like income and education and race and age, all of those good demographics that you want to include. And so these aren't causal analyses. I do need to note that up front. These are purely correlational, but they do kind of surface these patterns, again, that offer insight into where we might be able to get a bigger return to well-being. And I think they definitely make the case that, belonging is important. It is a predictor of well-being and thriving in the IE. The output of these models are odds ratios, which are not intuitive at all, even if you work with them all the time. So to try to make the kind of the magnitude of these associations more tangible, more real, we wanted to compare the boost that you get from belonging to something that's, I think, more kind of concrete, which is the boost that you get in our data set from income. And so specifically what I mean is that we're estimating how much more household income an IE resident would need to increase their odds of moving up a full well-being category. So from like suffering to struggling or struggling to thriving. So how much more household income you would need in the IE in our data set to move up by the same amount as just a 1 unit increase in each of these two sort of belonging subcomponents and belonging and civic muscle overall. So for reference, a 1 point increase in your level of agreement with those bonding statements increases your odds of moving up Cantrell's ladder by about the same amount as if you had an additional $30,000 a year in household income. For bridging connections, we're looking at an increase that's comparable in our data set to having an additional $90,000 a year in income. And for a 1 unit increase in both belonging and civic muscle, you're looking at increasing your odds of being in a higher well-being category by as much as an additional $190,000 a year in income. So these are really large, boosts in the data set. Again, like this isn't perfectly one-to-one. We can't say you can give somebody, $190,000 a year and say, go on your merry way. I no longer have to think about caring about your belonging or your civic muscle. Doesn't work like that. But I do think it gives you really this sense of like the strength of the association and the magnitude of the association. And I think it really points to this idea that investing in social fabric, especially across differences, so these sort of bridging connections, really might be able to offer kind of these outsized returns to regional well-being. And so this is the new stuff. If you have a great memory, everything will look familiar up until this point. So as Melanie said, we wanted to take just sort of a quick look at other measures we had that maybe were more relevant specifically to housing. She did explain that a lot of you are really big proponents of sort of how do we foster belonging through housing. You all know that that's already very important, which is fantastic. But we wanted to look at, we do have some questions in our data set that were more sort of related to humane housing in general. And so looking at, I don't know why that did that, looking at this to start. So just so you have an idea of kind of who we're in conversation with here, this is the percent of respondents that are not cost burdened, meaning that they spend less than 30% of their income on housing, cost burden 30 to 50%, or severely cost burden over 50%. And what we see is that nearly 3 in 5 households in the region for our data set are burdened by housing costs. So it's a really significant percentage, but probably not a surprise to this group. About 29% spend more than 30% of their income on housing, and about 27% spend over half of their income on housing. And it's less than 40, less than 45%. I think it's like 43 or 44% can afford housing without sort of this financial strain. I think the obvious first place to look, obviously, is sort of this in relation to income is the logical next step. And so I did just want to include for point of reference, this is how whether or not your housing cost burden or your level of burden sliced by your income. And what you'll see is that the majority of there's sort of this weird clustering effect that happens when you make less than $80,000 a year, where it's not perfectly split, but there is a degree of, there isn't sort of a clear pattern that emerges until you cross over that $80,000 a year threshold. And there's something, I don't know yet, I don't want to overstate this, but in all of the analysis that we've done using survey data for the IE, $80,000 a year seems to be this really critical cut point. So for instance, here at, at about $80,000 and above, the majority of households, are no longer cost burdened. And that's a really sharp break, and a very clear pattern emerges from these sort of lower income groups. And severe cost burden drops significantly after 80,000 from nearly, roughly 3 in 10 households to just below that point to just about 1 in 10 or fewer above it. So again, I don't know definitively kind of why this is the magic number in the data set. And don't want to overstate that, but it is interesting that the experience for less than 80,000 is much more kind of comparable across these groups than for above. So then when I looked at sort of housing cost burden sliced by well-being, again, just trying to get that sort of relationship and that association, or get at the potential association between housing costs and well-being. We see that households with severe housing cost burdens are far more likely to be suffering, so about 45% versus 33% for those who are not burdened. They're also far less likely to report thriving, which is about 18% versus about 55% for not burdened. And again, these are, underscore sort of how reducing cost burden is associated, obviously, with financial stability, but also, very clearly associated with overall kind of well-being and likely, in all likelihood, community resilience. So as part of this survey, we didn't have kind of room in the survey. We weren't asked to do a deep dive into all vital conditions, but we do have this battery of statements that you rate your level of agreement with that go across the vital conditions. And so I pulled the 2 statements that we have that are specific to housing and that were intended to sort of gauge humane housing. And these are the 2 statements in the data set.
The
So we
thinking of
asked for the
storing it.
level of agreement with the statement, after I pay my rent or mortgage, I have enough money to spend on other necessities. And we asked the level of agreement with the statement, I feel safe and secure inside my home. So this next graph, there we go. What you're looking at here then is the level, the percent of respondents who agree, who are severely cost burdened, or not at all cost burdened for those 2 statements. And I think that after I pay my rent or mortgage, I have enough money to spend on other necessities. That pattern is logical and exactly what I think we all would expect, which is, if you're not cost burdened, you are more likely to agree that, yeah, you have enough money for necessities. That second question, though, I feel safe and secure inside my home, I think is interesting. And it, again, probably will not be a surprise to this group. But I did think it was interesting that nearly half of households that are not cost burdened feel safe and secure in their homes. But that sense of safety and security drops really steeply as the percentage of income dedicated to housing rises. And it ends up being that just about, 30% of those who are cost burdened and just about 25% of those who are severely cost burdened report feeling safe, in their homes. And so, again, preaching to the choir here, affordability then isn't just, a financial issue. It's really directly associated with this sort of stability, comfort, peace of mind that you have at home. And I think we all can probably start thinking about, if we didn't feel safe and secure in our houses, the impact that would have on our well-being, on our ability to, perform well at our job, to get that promotion, to feel optimistic about what comes next in life. And so, again, this is all very, very rudimentary, just slicing the data based on what we had immediately at our disposal. But to give you some insight, again, into some of the housing specific questions that we ran, I wanted to share these. So in terms of kind of next steps, things to look out for, as I mentioned, there is a 12-page report that was published for the conference, and there's also a companion report that is 50 some odd pages long. If you scan the QR code, you can take a look at it if you're interested. There are lots of additional findings. There are other measures that weren't reported here. And then if you look on pages actually 42 through 45 of that online longer report, we included a list of the variables in the survey. And so if there's a variable that you're interested in, or if you're interested in maybe the relationship between a couple of those, let us know. We're really interested in being able to sort of conduct these kind of custom analyses for your organization. The goal in doing this with IECF, I think, really was to try to find a way to make this data kind of accessible to the region for you all to be able to use it in your work. So please, again, take a look at what's there. We also, I know Melanie talked about this probably a year ago. We're really excited because we're actually about to launch probably in October here, what we're calling sort of these rapid response policy fellows. And so these are graduate researchers who will be kind of on hand to run these sorts of little micro analyses for you to maybe help your organization with these little discrete one-off research questions. So, if you have something that you're interested in from the survey, or if you want to learn more about that program and how you can make use of us there, that's a no-cost program to you. Please, reach out to us. Our email address is there. But I think I am at time, so I'm going to stop there.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. Um, I think we have time for one question, if there is. That might be kind of hard. I think I wrote down a bunch as you were going, so that I intend to follow up on. But one thing I just wanted, I wanted to kind of wrap up with. I know that, for housing and for us houser folks, we understand the correlation, right, to belonging and well-being, that, stable, safe, affordable housing is directly correlated to well-being and folks' ability to thrive in our region. Um, and so I thought this was really interesting, especially the piece about um, understanding the social fabrics and how that can help of, investing. And as we look to housing in different communities, we look to building housing. How are we facilitating that kind of community space where neighbors, families can, and just other resources can build those social fabrics to just increase our overall thriving ability. Although we have a great, um, percentage for belonging across the US, that's exciting. I think that's unique to the IE and something I guess I'm not too surprised about because I think there's a lot of regional, sub-regional connections and that we have. So I appreciate you coming and sharing out. If you want to, if you don't mind dropping your email in the chat, that way if folks have some additional follow-up questions, they could reach out. And thank you again. We're excited to hear about the Rapid Fellow program. That's, again, I remember having that conversation last year and just being like, oh man, I already have some council members I think that I know would love to connect with you and just get your feedback and have some data in their decision-making process. So I personally am excited, as I know other collective members will be too, to leverage that resource. So thank you again for coming, and I'll look and I'll actually have the report. I'll pull it down and I'll send it out in our last newsletter, in our upcoming newsletter, if folks want to see that too. So
The link and to the report does not seem to go to the right report.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I think
yeah.
if you,
Thank you.
my understanding is that it goes to a page that has the 12-page report embedded, and then there's a link above it that says click here for the online companion. You can click on
Okay.
that.
All right.
Yeah, of
Thank you.
course.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much. And so now we're going to move on to our second presenter. So I want to welcome, and I mean, they're not new to the space. I want to welcome the Executive Director of Inland Equity Community Land Trust. We have Maribel Nunez and Associate Director Jeff Green, who are on here, and they're going to share who needs presenter rights, presenter rights, Maribel or Jeff?
I do.
Okay, cool. I'll go ahead and give you those right now.
And I think I'm here
Mhm.
location, so I don't know if my internet's a little spotty, but my apologies.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll get through it, and I know Jeff's on here, so he can maybe jump in if something happens. But we appreciate you guys both coming and sharing a little bit about Plan Adelanto. I know, this project has been a long time coming, and I believe it's the first of its kind for San Bernardino County, the first community land trust in San Bernardino County. So we're excited to see that and see you guys lead in that space. So we welcome you to share out and tell us a little bit about this project.
For everyone, and thank you, Melanie, and everybody here for allowing us to present. Again, Director of Inland Equity Community Land Trust. We were founded in 2020, California partnership. So it became definitely during COVID. So if we can go to the next slide. As I was sharing, we were founded in 2020. We organization, so we have a lot of experience on doing anti-poverty policy and community. as we're going through this, we're officially 501(c)(3). We were fiscally. We also lead the work on the Inland Empire tenant civilization in mobile home parks or apartments. So we're definitely, and we use our civic. So what is Community Land Trust? I think, I don't know if I needed, I don't know, Melanie, if I need to go, people understand what Community Land Trust is. Yes, okay.
Yeah, I would go into a little bit. You're breaking up a little bit too.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, but go ahead and get, yeah, I think a definition of community land trust would be great.
If you can go back, Jeff. So Community Land Trust are, it's new in the Inland Empire, but not new in the United States. Innovative idea of separating the ownership from the of land from ownership of getting it out of the speculative market. It's a pathway that we see fit that would allow low to build pathways to home ownership. So that land itself is owned by member-run stakeholders, community. We have some and electeds, and then the residents. So one third, one third, one third, right? So it's that are in the C3, right, of the nonprofit. As part of our shared commons, we remove it from, like I said, from the speculative market. This land is 99 ground year, lease. And so then the individual would own the unit, nonprofit would own the land, and we would share the equity. And the goal is to keep it affordable. And it could be, a house or it could be mixed use as well. So again, the long-term goal is to protect the land, speculative market, make it community-based, and keep it permanent affordable. So once the leave, we keep it as affordable. So I don't know, Jeff, feel free to and everything. So, all right. Or yeah. Okay. So like I said, in California, there's there's several of them. Oops. Okay. And as mentioning, in Georgia was one of the first ones in the country. Operation Jackson in Mississippi, and then Lake Champlain. Bernie Sanders when he was the mayor of Vermont. Now it's Lake Champlain. And yeah, so we have Inland Equity Community Land Trust and then MPHA. I know they do a lot of good work, but one of them is also CLT work. Yeah, so just, very African American and Latino led, and it kind of going back to our indigenous roots that we saw as communal land. And so, yeah, that's the way. And so it is changing or going back to our roots, right? Nothing.
Maribel,
Collective accountability and
Maribel, you're cutting in and out quite a bit. Is there a way that you could possibly call in on the phone on your phone?
oh, okay. Or
That
maybe
might,
what about if I turn off the camera too? Maybe that could help too.
okay, yeah, let's try that.
If it doesn't, then Jeff, just chime in, and then I'm going to get on because it will take some time to go back.
Okay.
If you could go to the next slide. So a lot of our organization membership and board members from California Partnership, we all agreed that, one of our former board members, rest in peace, Beverly Earl from Catholic Charities. She is someone that said, working and seeing just how things are in the Inland Empire, and cost of living has gone up, increase of homelessness. So she really helped us elevate the importance of housing and how we tackle. And it's not just giving rental assistance, but how do we build pathways to community wealth? And so we transitioned, and like I said, we became our 501(c)(3) in 2020. And like I said, we have diverse stakeholders of people that are renters, community, nonprofits. And then, like I said, as we talk about our Plan Adelanto, we will include group of residents that will be in our board. And so, like I said, we took a lot of ideas. We didn't have to also, reinvent the wheel. We looked at Lake Champlain. We're also board members of the California Community Network. So they were very helpful as we were doing the community land trust work, helped us guide us on what kind of lease we're going to have with the residents. So there's a lot of support out there for folks that are starting up the community land trust, because I know we're one of the first. And so yes, okay. And so I know we're kind of repeating here. So yeah, so we became a nonprofit, but we didn't have any land. And I kid you not, we had an individual just went through our ICLT Facebook page and sent us a message. And so that individual, she reached out. Her brother had passed away and had 20 acres of unincorporated part of Adelanto. And she was a strong believer of community land trust. So we had a 101. And so she was going to sell it for $100,000. And so we ended up getting like a little, well, not little, because when you're new, right? We didn't have we reached out to different types of lenders, so that always is hard. We're only not only new on the CLT work, but we're a new developer, right? So not a lot of people are going to be, lending money, right? So we did get like through a connection. A lot of it is connections, right, and relationships. So through a connection, we got a broker loan, and we were able to fund that. And then just continuing getting the word out, and we did a lot of civic engagement in that. We ended up buying it, and we had a loan to pay for it, and we had like a year timeline. And so we've been organizing the community. They were very supportive, and so we had the elections happening, and so some of those folks helped us. Some remember Juan Carillo, and so we got into his ear, and so then we ended up kind of. It's been, and I know Live to Res and a lot of folks have done really good at doing state budget ask. We've had a lot of relationships with staffers that work for assembly members and senators. So we had like an idea of a timeline and thinking, why don't we try it? So we did a state budget ask, and we were asking for $1,500,000, and we ended up getting $1 million. And then we got connected with another angel investor to fill in some of the gaps. But yeah, it's very important that, unfortunately, these things could be political. I think if you have the community on your side, especially when it's something innovative and it's good for the community, it's important that they have your back, right? And really talking to people that have decisions on access to the budget, like I said, remember Juan Carillo. Yes.
Maribel and Jeff, we have a question in the chat that I think would be relevant to answer now. And it says, the question is, can you explain the model further? I'm only familiar with the CLT, where land is owned separately from the actual structure. So a buyer can purchase the structure and at least gain equity of the home property and not the land.
I don't know. I maybe I didn't mention it like that, but I don't know, Jeff, if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I'm happy to add. Let me get myself on camera here. Hopefully
Hold on,
y'all can
Jeff.
hear me.
I think Jeff was going to jump in too.
Oh, Jeff.
And
okay,
then too. Yeah, but I think Jesse. Yeah, oh, Jeff, can you mute? You're unmuted. There you go. I don't know if you can unmute yourself, Jeff. Oh, there you go.
Sorry, I thought you muted me. Okay. Yeah, the homeowner is going to own the house. The easiest way to think about it is like a condominium, except for it's a nonprofit. And so they're going to own the structure, and they do build equity up. So when they make a down payment and they make payments on the loan, that equity builds up. Plus, as if the home appreciates, they take 75% of that equity as well. They share back. They're in an equity sharing agreement with the Community Land Trust to share back 25% of the equity, and they build that kind of wealth. They can pass it on to their relatives. They own the house, the structure itself. So yeah, that's how they build equity. It's a I don't know if there's more questions other than that.
Yeah, Jesse, do you want to add anything else to the
Sure. I'll
CLT?
just say this. It can, so what Jeff described is a way of doing it. There's a myriad of ways you can really set up the what we would call the equity share component, meaning that you can, like, for example, we've tied our affordability to the AMI as the index. So what that means is when we sell the property, we're selling to a household that's 80% AMI or below. And when they're going to go sell it, they're also going to sell it to a household that's 80% AMI or below. In the last decade, for example, in Riverside County, the AMI indices has increased by 32%. So whoever would own that home would have assumed at least 32% in appreciation, right? Depending on if they, if they're going by 80, exactly 80%. So to the next individual. So that, and plus they get to keep whatever equity they've gained through paying down the mortgage. So there's the appreciation side, and then there's the total equity with combining both what's paid down plus the appreciation. Now, again, that is just one model. There are many ways that you can approach and how you want to, preserve that affordability and utilize that profit share. As again, what Jeff described was one way. We do it a little bit different. But the idea is, again, the nonprofit or the trust is really retains ownership of the land. The capital improvements are sold to a homeowner. The homeowner then has a ground lease that between the owner of the land and themselves, and that preserves the affordability, hopefully in perpetuity. Our ground leases are typically 99 years. And so they have 99 years in which they are, again, to make certain maintenance. It sort of has a maintenance agreement in there as well. And so it's all encompassing. And again, moving forward, the land trust would be involved in the transactions, ensuring that the preceding buyers would go ahead and they're correct buyers, and that they're meeting all the guidelines and understand what the documentation is, and same thing with any potential lenders. So that's how I just wanted to let folks know there is more than one way of approaching the affordability and the equity share component.
Right. And then another element that I didn't mention on Inland Equity's model is the buyer, when they buy the house, is going to pay us for the build out cost, and the market value difference will be also part of the equity share. And so when they sell the house, so let's say they pay 330 for it, and the market value is 400,000, then they have $70,000 in equity that's locked into the walls of the house. And when they sell it, that $70,000 difference gets passed on to the next buyer. So it always stays permanently below market rate, which is one of our goals. So I don't know, Maribel, if you want to jump back in, or you want me to continue on, or
Yes, and so far I think maybe the camera worked. Sorry, I was trying to log through the phone, but let's move along. So if Jeff, feel free to chime in if I come in and out. So yeah, so here is a slide to show a little bit where we have our land. It's in the unincorporated part of Adelanto. It's really, if you know where Adelanto is, it's basically near the Adelanto High School. And yeah, it's very rural. The way it's zoned, it doesn't allow us to, even within the 20 acres, it's the property is zoned for residential agricultural use, and we can only do one house per 5 acres. And then so we're going to do the first four, and then we have to wait a couple years through SB9. Hopefully we could do the other four, and the max we can do is 16. But yeah, so definitely, and for us as a community land trust, because we've gotten some feedback like, oh, why would you go in a rural area? I think this opportunity came to us, and we're a new developer, we're an emergent community land trust. So we don't have, it's much more higher, right? Cost to go to a infill or like a metropolitan area, right? So and we'll talk more about some of our ideas for next steps for future projects. But so yeah, the first four, and then our goal is individuals that are 120% or below on the AMI, and they're taking home ownership assistance class. Shout out to NHSIE that have helped with some of our residents take some of the classes. We do have a list of folks that have signed up, and we're going to be, interviewing them and sharing and just making sure, like, as we're getting through these four, and we'll share, our upcoming groundbreaking. So yeah, they have to finish up a home ownership program. So let's go to the next slide. So yes, there's been challenges. I think in the, like, some of us that went to the Inland Empire, right? Community Foundation's Policy and Philanthropy Summit, right? And these breakouts that Melanie and other folks had facilitated in the housing workshop, is that, the permitting, county, because we're working with county staff, they're saying they want this, but then they want that. There's like a whole laundry list of things that kept changing. In this project, we partner with MPHS for our modulars for our units. So then we're working together with our project manager and MPHS and the staff. So, we did reach out to relationships and partnerships are very key. I did reach out to Board of Supervisors Paul Cook's office to see if we could, help us facilitate, right, or get things more smoother in the process of getting our permitting and our entitlement and everything else. So I think that that's one of our major issues. I know with the Housing Authority, we wanted to work with them on their home ownership assistance program. For, maybe this time it didn't work out, but maybe in our next four of houses, maybe that could happen. So there's still more work to be done so that there's, more partnerships between. Because we wanted to do like people that were renting or just different resources working with the Housing Authority. And yeah, we had to get loans, we had to get capital grants. That's ways to fund the community land trust work. It is always hard when you're new as an emergent CLT. So the state budget ask with the Summer Carillo was a big help. A lot of the grants that are out there, especially for emergent CLTs, are technical assistance grants, some general operations, very low in regards to capital grants. We did get a grant from US Bank, which helped. We are very appreciative from some of the general operations, but we're, exploring, other philanthropy, especially maybe not this iteration, but other units that we may do in the future. So, yeah. And like I said, part of the challenge is, we came out during 2020 during COVID. So, we come from doing county budget advocacy. So we kind of use that year serving the community, what the needs are and what they want to see the COVID dollars go. And then just, talk, a lot of them wanted rental assistance, economic assistance, or, they wanted an eviction moratorium. So we were focusing on those things and put the CLT in the back burner. So unfortunately, but yes, let's go to the next slide. And this is just, showing that the state budget could do a lot more. There's only through the 1%, right, according to the California Budget Policy Center. When we're looking since 2018, only 1%, right, budgets, it's for housing and homelessness. And then don't even account for the social housing or community land trust work. It's even less than that. And so, and there was commitments from, from the state to do money for foreclosure intervention and housing preservation program. Then it got slushed. So yeah, there's still more work to be done in getting our state budget to prioritize. Because in these last, I know a lot of groups here have done state budget ask, and this time we didn't, when there's deficits or there's things that happen in DC. So the state budget ask, it doesn't always like pencil in every year to be able to do it. So sometimes it just depends. Things have to check off, I guess. Things are not chaotic in the federal level to be able to do the state budget ask locally. Next slide. Yeah, I mean, like I think I shared this before. It's people love the idea because there's community land trusts across the state. I see that funders are starting to have interest in this philanthropy. I think we helped open the doors for other CLTs to emerge since it won't be completely new, right? More and more people are going to know what CLT is. I think having also our sister organization, the 501c4, helps as well. And I think that that's fair game, right? Because you have other interest groups that do the same. and things happen, right? To the best for those interests. So that I see no other way. If you could talk to me afterwards, I'll put my information if you want to talk further. It's separate from this call, but I have talked to folks here regarding this issue. Our next project, hopefully we can do some work in Hoopa Valley. We've done a lot of work with them. We had a grant from SCAG to do a study on community land trust. And then we helped with the housing element, the inclusion housing, really get the community engaged in a lot of the housing projects. So those happen into fruition. So we also help for the city of Hoopa Valley to be a pro-housing designation city. I really want to give a shout out to Inland SoCal Housing Collective and also helping other cities do the same. And so I think we're just continuing the momentum. I know we have a lot of community support in Hoopa Valley, so we'll see how things go. I know there's a lot of local partners here too that are doing great work. So I think it's just about collaboration to move the needle on this issue. And I'm sorry I haven't been able to look at the chat if there's any questions, but I think we're getting close to the end of our time. I don't know, Jeff, if you wanted to add anything, or if not, we'll take questions if there's any. You're on mute, Jeff. And Jeff wants to show a little bit
Okay, I want to add this link. This is where people can sign up if they want to get on the list to purchase a home in Adelanto. There's this is the ad I made. I made this really bad rendering, so I wanted to show that off. This is going to be the ad one, but we're going to probably put a potted plant or something on there. And then I just want to give a shout out. This is the IE Tenant Union. So if you know renters that want to help assert their renter rights, have them join there. And we do a lot of things for renters. I'm going to stop sharing now. And yeah, open it up for questions.
Yeah, so I heard you guys have a groundbreaking happening. Can you tell us when that is?
Yes, and I was just about to put the flyer. Thank you. I know that's what
Perfect.
we had it in the slides, but I think we didn't really emphasize. Thank you so much. So yeah, so we have our good news. Well, Jeff can go into more details about the permitting and all that. That's the non-sexy stuff, right? So then that took 2 years, and we're ready to break ground, and our ceremony will be Saturday, August 30th. We got confirmation that Assembly Member Juan Carillo will be there. And we have some local electeds, I think Council Member Stevana Evans, Victorville City Council Member Leslie Irving, and a lot of different community folks that helped the community folks that helped us, get into the radar of Assembly Member Gadilla will be there. We're very excited. So our groundbreaking is Saturday, August 30th at the location. And yeah, we're very new at this. I think we reached out to MPHS for the shovels and the hard hats, I think. So anyway, so we're very grassroots, so we don't have all that fancy stuff, and so we're all going to be, anyway. So yeah, we're very excited, and we hope that you all can join us. We're very, very excited.
I just wanted to also say that the first home is scheduled for delivery on the 22nd. They're going to load it on the truck. So there'll probably be one of the homes out there before we do the groundbreaking. So,
yeah,
That's great. So it's a little bit of an opening. We can't go inside, but we get to see a little preview, it sounds like. Well, that's great. Congratulations. I know that this has been a project y'all have been working on for a while, so we're excited to see it come to form, come to life, and excited to watch the different phases unroll. If there isn't any questions, if you have any questions, or Maribel and Jeff, if you want to drop your email in the chat, so that way if folks want to follow up with you or have any questions, that'd be great. They can do so.
yeah, I'll put my information on the chat, and then like I said, and then for C4 work, I'll put my email there too, if anybody wants to
Awesome.
reach out.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Melanie, and everybody here. And yeah, and then I said it's good to partner with folks. And again, shout out to NHSIE with the Homeownership Assistance Program, MPHS. So you can't do it with alone. So we appreciate the collaboration. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Great work. And I appreciate both of our speakers coming on today and just sharing out about some of the research and vital conditions and how belonging correlates, or how belonging and thriving and struggling, how do we see it in the IE and how does it correlate to humane housing? Right now in this second half, this last portion, last 30 minutes of the meeting, we dedicate it to um, pillar updates. And so the Inland SoCal Housing Collective, we have four pillars and three distinct working groups: our policy, our Educate and Advocate for Public Policy, our Wealth Building and Preservation, which hosts our Bank On coalition, and then our Expansion of Housing Solutions pillar. So I want to invite any of our chairs. So I think we have one chair that's on right now, and I could support in that other space, and then Jay can do the update. But Ayako, do you want to jump in? I have a slide that has the meeting times that I'll throw
Oh,
up right
great.
now if you want to provide an update and just a shout out for tomorrow.
Great. Fantastic. Thanks, Mel, and thanks speakers, Maribel and Jeff. Congratulations. Super exciting. I know you've been working on this for a while, so congrats. So Ayako Utsumi here with Mary Erickson Community Housing, and I'm also the vice chair of Inland SoCal Housing Collective. I head the expansion of housing solutions pillar, and we meet the second Tuesday of every month. So that's tomorrow, second Tuesday of the month.
Thursday.
Oh, it's
Thursday.
tomorrow because we had to do a little one-off. Normally it
Yeah.
would have been last week, but this time we're just rescheduled to the third Tuesday, just this once. But it is tomorrow at 9 a.m. So if you're interested, please do put that in the chat or reach out to Melanie or me. We tend to year focus on slightly different angles of affordable housing options and solutions. So we've had foci on homelessness, faith-based housing, that type of thing. But this year we wanted to take a closer look at middle housing. So that's whatever is between, that is more than a single family house and a multifamily rental. So it's whatever is in between. So this duplexes all the way on up. So we'd like to not forget about home ownership. And again, thank you to Maribel and Jeff for promoting home ownership, even though it is with the land trust. And we don't want to forget about that because we know that ownership helps us to really facilitates more belonging. The first speaker spoke about belonging and financial stability, and home ownership really facilitates that to a great degree and helps people to have roots in the area. So we don't want to forget about that, but we know that detached single family is just out of reach for the average family. So what are the other solutions? Can we have more density? Can we have different building options, different siting options? Can our city and county planning our government partners, can they come alongside us and make it easier to build more dense but home ownership opportunities that are closer to more urban resources and schools and amenities, that type of thing, to build these homes where people want to live, but still be able to own a home. So we wanted to dive deeper this year into middle housing. So we have focused on a few cities, the city of Riverside, and a couple others, maybe Rancho Cucamonga and Ontario. We'd love your input if you'd like us to focus on other jurisdictions as well. But we thought we'd take a closer look to say, well, how friendly are they to this type of housing? And I think Agrippina Neubauer was on the call, at least earlier. And the city of Riverside received a $500,000 SCAG grant to help them with middle housing. Their proposal was to, and with encouragement from Mel and Inland SoCal Housing Collective and others, to apply for a grant that would allow them to create templated middle housing architectural plans, construction documents, so that anyone for free could take them and then build something on a lot that they own. Or if it was an SB9 lot split, that would be appropriate for a single family home or a duplex on for SB9 lot split. So we're taking a closer look at this. I'm part of the technical advisory committee for the city of Riverside. So we're very excited to see what the city comes up with. We will keep Inland SoCal Housing Collective posted on the progress, and I look forward to sharing that with you. And maybe a city representative could come on and share the final results with us, but we will be keeping tabs on that. So again, focus this year, middle housing. Thanks, Mel. Oh, Damian O'Farrell said, and his HPLA group, that was the housing policy.
Yeah, I put that in the chat. So Damien O'Farrell and his HPLA group were the ones who partnered with the city of Riverside to start that middle housing discussion, and that has,
Yeah,
we've
fantastic.
seen
Thank
that
you.
for that fruition. So I've
Yes,
been a
thanks,
cheerleader of
everyone.
their efforts for sure. So
Yep.
awesome. And so Jay, do you want to pop in and provide a quick, 2-3 minute update for wealth building and bank on?
Yes, thank you, Melanie. And even though we've had some time off from the summer, we haven't been resting on our laurels, so to speak. We had quite a bit going on. And so we're excited that we were able to launch our Train the Trainer program with one of our partner banks, Mechanics Bank, and they cover not just our Inland Empire area, but areas all over into Imperial County and the rest of the state. And they're also going through a merger. And so we'll be helping them early next year with a new set of partners that will include Hawaii, Oregon, and Washington, as well as California. So a lot of good support from that organization. We have many other organizations that are stepping up and are ready here very soon to go through the train the trainer um, process. And it's important because many people have found, even recently, that if they send a client or a family member or a friend into a bank or credit union to open a safe, affordable account so that they can get started with their financial wellness and moving their financial life in a positive direction, that they often get either no response or a negative response or the wrong response from the frontline staff. And we realize that many of our retail banking and credit union partners are experiencing some of the same challenges as the broader retail world, where it's difficult to find and to retain good help at the frontline positions. And so we're working hard to help them get up to speed, the current staff members, as well as integrate into their onboarding processes, information about the Bank On program, and then ultimately also how our CBO and government agency partners can work with the bankers, because sometimes we may speak different languages and use different words to mean the same thing. And so helping each of us understand each other's language and terminology is going to be important to help us all work together to bring about 1 million people into the banking mainstream. And that is the calculation that we have, about 300,000 currently have active bank on accounts and are doing great, but we still have about 1 million people, and I can't reach all 1 million myself. So that's why I'm trying to clone myself as rapidly as possible into hundreds and maybe thousands of other individuals around our inland empire. And the whole reason that this ties into housing is that many of our incredible affordable housing options require a family or an individual to show 6 months of bank history, a bank statement of some sort, and they need them to show a current credit history of activity. And so when people are existing on their phone with some apps or in a cash environment that does not show up on credit reports or bank statements, it's very difficult to document where they are in financially. And so we want to encourage them to take that first step and then the next step and the next step to move into the ability to have affordable housing of one type or another. So uh, we will be having an event coming up in November, and we're inviting lots of people to participate in that. And Melanie's really doing a great job of helping push that along with some of our excellent partners. Um, and so we want you to be aware of that and be ready for that. We had to change a little bit of the format of what we were going to be doing from a two event format to a single event format. But it's still going to be very important for our region to bring many more people, including our faith partners, on board with our wealth building as well as our bank on efforts. Is there anything else you can think of, Melanie, that I'm leaving out here?
No, I think that covers it. Our next meeting will be in September, the second Tuesday of September, and we'll be having the wealth building and preservation pillar. So between
Yes.
the wealth building and the bank on every other month, we rotate between the two working committees. And so there's some overlap and some are distinct and different. So um, if you'd like to participate in both, it's easy. It's second Tuesday of the month. If it's one committee or one working group, the Bang On Coalition or the Pillar, let us know and we could get you in synced with that meeting's rhythm of the year. So next month in September, it'll be the Wealth Building and Preservation Pillar.
And I guess I should mention we
Yeah.
do have a new Bank On member here in our region in the Ontario and Montclair area, and a credit union that's changed their name from the School Employees Credit Union for that region to the Vita Credit Union. And so they're a brand new partner. We're excited to have them with their safe, affordable account that they just had certified, and excited to see that and looking forward to hopefully having some other new accounts coming up, as well as some people opening new branches in our region
Mhm.
that will continue to support the Inland Empire.
Mhm. Thank you, Jay. Um, sorry. I'll go ahead and I'll share out for our Educate and Advocate for Public Policy. We may have Araceli Palafox jump on. We'll see if she's able to jump on and talk a little bit about some of the advocacy tools that have been released. And so, sorry, I'm gonna go to the next slide real quick. They'll let me. Hmm. Sorry about that. All right, I think my computer, oh, let's just do it there. There we go. All right, we're just going to pause there and I'll bring up the actual items. So there's two items. So in our Educate and Advocate for Public Policy pillar, we had a meeting last month on and we met. It was an in-person one. It was at NPHS. They opened up their space for us to have a working and power building meeting where we talked about the affordable housing bond as well as ASIC. Um, and so we spent some time as the bond is being moved through the Senate right now. And we know that both bills are in the Senate. One had originated in the Senate and one had originated in the Assembly, but both are there now. And so there's a crunch time specifically last week and this week to reach out and to call our local legislators, specifically our senators, our state senators, to talk a little bit about the bill, why it's important to us. And so the policy coalition for the state, which consists of a bunch of folks, primarily we have Enterprise, Housing California, and California Housing Partners are the main leaders on that. They put together a toolkit for folks to use. And so what I had dropped in the chat is the toolkit. I recognize that when they send it to us, they send it to in a PDF because we're a part of the the email stream, and they don't really have it published on any of their websites, but you have to be a part of that campaign. So if you can't access that, if you go to the newsletter that was sent out on Monday, it's attached to that newsletter too. And if you don't have it there, just email me and I'll send it to you directly. But I'll share the document actually right now on my screen. Um, so you all can get a glimpse of what it looks like. Hmm. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. So this is the toolkit. It just gives us a brief overview and specifically it outlines some of the outreach targets. In addition, the Senate leadership and local Senate Housing Committee members. Has the phone numbers and of their local district offices too. Super helpful. So if you have time within this week to make a few phone calls, I've estimated it just from some experience to be, it's probably about 15 minutes to do it and to like read the document, get familiar with the script, and then make one or two calls. So it doesn't take too much time unless you plan on going through the whole list and calling everyone, which is great. I applaud you if so. But that would take a little bit more. But if you have 15 minutes carved out, we'd love for you to do that. Because really this is how we're going to be able to get things built is we need some source of funding to come through. And this bond is essential to that. What we learned in the past meeting that we had in person in PHS, it was a hybrid actually. But what we learned in that meeting was for the bond, we're not getting into, there's not really a specific discussion around what programs would be funded to what level. We've already sent some recommendations as to some programs that we felt were missing, such as the MORE program. The focus right now is just trying to get the bond through and then to talk the details that there's not really space dedicated now to what is included in the bond. There is some suggestions of what they intend to, but that actual discussion and um, final allocations has not been decided. That's something that we're waiting from the coalition, the state coalition, to hear from. So we'd love to, if you want to be a part of that space, we'd love for you to join the policy pillar, especially if you've got input on how those housing funds should be dedicated and allocated. We're going to have that discussion hopefully once the bond comes out. We're hoping that gets through. So please, if you have time, make a few phone calls. And if you need this, feel free to reach out to me. The Housing Bond California also has a website that they launched about 3 weeks ago. So if you're interested in having there's a great overview of everything. There's not a lot of details on here yet. We're just waiting for it to go through, and this is where the campaign for the bond will then ultimately land once it goes through, fingers crossed. Next is ASIC. So the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Fund, ASIC funds, is a 20% set aside from the GGRF, I always mess Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. And what it is ASIC receives 20% of those funds. And those funds are dedicated towards affordable housing, building sustainable communities through transportation and different housing programs. This has been a stable source of funding to build affordable housing in our region. Last year, in the past years, we've had 0 to 1 applicant in each round. And in this 9th round, I just got word from the technical expert at Enterprise that we had 3 applications just submitted for our region this year. So that's a huge win, especially since last year in partnership with WR and SB the collective, and the 2 COGs, we did some TA, some ASIC 101, and try to bring all the cities and elevate the current ASIC projects underway to help demonstrate how this project can help build, but also to provide some technical assistance since they had provided some new guidelines that benefited our region. But in terms of like location, and there's some, the program originally was written that it had some parameters that wasn't beneficial for our region. It made it harder for us to apply and win, but some modifications have been made, which makes it a little bit easier and better. And there's also a rural application which would apply to some of our areas in the IE. So with that being said, this program is vital, and some people believe that our advocacy efforts should be geared towards just the bond right now or just towards ASIC, but the collective believes it's a both effort because both funds are needed to build at the rate that we need housing. So in this template that was it was actually released yesterday, I believe, or even this morning. I've gotten it twice, but this is an email template here. I'll drop it in the chat for y'all to jump into if you haven't yet seen it. But this is one that we can email to our local legislators. And really what this is not is advocating as they're in discussions that ASIC doesn't get removed. So the fear is that because there's a big push towards the housing bond, that there's going to be a pivot in the conversation for a cap and trade, which includes the GGRF funds, which is the ASIC, 20% of those are the ASIC funds that because there's folks saying, well, you're going to get the bond, so then maybe we'll move this funds to something else. That's the fear of many folks. And so this advocacy work is really just to say, please preserve the ASIC funds, please renew it for another round, just to keep it, because there's discussions on this big program being removed altogether, and we've seen it's been beneficial. So this in here, I just wanted to elevate really one super cool tool in this document. There's a helpful legislative director lookup tool here, which is this, and come on, here we go. And so this is Capitol Codex. This is a lot of great information. It has all the assembly, all the Senate. It has the member, their chief of staff, and legislative director listed there. So it's a really powerful tool in terms of being able to contact and follow up with folks on housing advocacy. So I urge you guys to go into this document, find time to get in there and to see what is relevant, and send an email to your local legislators. Awesome. Okay. Did I miss anything? Is there anything else folks want to add who are in attendance? Okay, awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys hanging on. I know that the last 30 minutes cuts off many folks for other meetings and other tasks on hand. So I appreciate you guys hanging out. I will follow up if you need any of these documents. I'll drop it in the chat if you want to hang out for a second. And also you could just email me directly. I'll also include the ASIC release Actually, no, just email me if you want this or go on to Enterprise because the email needs to go out this week by the 25th, is when negotiation should end. So there's all urgency for both of these to happen, advocacy to happen this week. So, well, thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it. And I'll hang out here and drop those documents in the chat if you want to hang out in a second and get it. Otherwise, I'll see you guys around. Thank you.
Seeing everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Jeff.